Guild Wars 2, for me, was the best game of 2012. I've been waiting for the sequel of my most played MMO for what seemed like an eternity, and when it was finally released, I wasn't disappointed. That being said, there are no perfect games, and as much as I love Guild Wars 2, there are a few problems in game. Before I get into my list of things that Guild Wars 2 got wrong, I want to urge anyone who hasn't given the game a try, because it is truly something special. That's what makes this list so interesting. What could such a fantastic game get so clearly wrong? As a die-hard fan of the series, these are the 5 things, in my opinion, that ArenaNet missed the mark on. Number 1. Zhaitan. One of the big selling points of Guild Wars 2, especially over its predecessor, was the Elder Dragons. The chance to take the fight to massive beasts of mythical power, Zhaitan was Guild Wars 2's main antagonist. Throughout the story you strive to tackle Zhaitan, and only him. Very little of the other dragons are even mentioned in any of the personal stories. That's why it sticks out like a sore thumb that the final battle with Zhaitan is probably one of the most disappointing final battles of any game in recent memory.
Yeah, I'm not finding Zhaitan that impressive.
But he's the end boss, come on, isn't he? Look at him, he looks amazing, right? You can't actually fight him, but he looks cool, right? When you fight some of the massive group versus dragon battles, like the likes of the Shatter or the Core of Jormag, there's a general sense of epic fight sort of feel that lasts for some time. The battle lasts for, sometimes even half an hour, but while Zhaitan does indeed last that long, there are literally no battle mechanics to face him. It's bash number 2 until he's dead. It's all good to have a final boss that looks as magnificent as Zhaitan does, but if you don't actually fight him, really what's the point? The battles against his minions are far more engaging and actually impressive. The very placement of the final boss is a decision that boggles my brain. In order to face Zhaitan himself, you must participate in the final dungeon. This means for the very climactic battle of what could be maybe 200-250 hours of brilliant Guild Wars 2 gaming, you may not even see your final character, in the cutscenes, you might not even see them in the final mission of the game. For a game that was promised to build on making your character a hero, this is really a travesty. I would have preferred a battle more akin to those group battles that we had against the Shatterer or Tequatl, or some of these 30 or 50 versus one enemy sort of battles. But the way that ArenaNet decided to go just seems like a real waste of potential. Zhaitan isn't really that big of a dragon also, to be fair. I mean, most of the minion dragons you face before him are only slightly smaller in stature, and the Claw of Jormag, which is one of the lieutenants of the other Elder Dragons, looks to be bigger than Zhaitan. I mean, I know that the size of the dragon doesn't go to how epic it is, but it's when everything else sort of fails, that seems to stick out to me as well. Number 2. Poor voice acting, namely Trahearne. While this may not have come as a shock to many of the Guild Wars fans, especially those that had been tracking the game's development for quite some time, the voice acting in Guild Wars 2 is overall quite poor. And a lot of the reviewers picked up on that as well, and it's true. Regardless of the reason, it's most likely because the game's sound development was recorded over many years, and there are very few characters that sound legitimately part of the beautiful world. There are a few examples of really poor voice acting. Many of the voices for the playable races are pretty poor, 1 or 2 are okay, but there is one character that really takes the biscuit. I mean, surely it couldn't be a minor character that you speak to every now and then. No, it's the main character for the entire story. Trahearne's voice just gets worse and worse as the campaign progresses. It has very little passion. I mean, his monotone voice was enough to make me feel sleepy on late night gaming, and You know, that's not exactly what they want to be going for. The range of Traherne's voice very rarely changes. It's whether he's sad, angry, confused, excited. It sounds the same every time.
We have the orb and powerful explosives developed by our top demolitionist, but there have been disturbing glitches in communication. Fort Trinity is not yet secure. Worst of all, our Asura gates are not functioning, and nobody can tell me why. Magical or mechanical failure, saboteurs. It's all very disturbing. It's all very disturbing. It's all very disturbing. It's all very disturbing.
Because of Traherne's voice, the whole issue of bad voice acting is highlighted multiple times throughout the campaign. Even worse for Sylvari characters who deal with him from the very beginning. It's not just Marshall of the Pact who gets it horribly wrong. There, some of even Destiny's Edge don't sound that great or even believable at times. In terms of voice acting, ArenaNet had to nail down their marquee characters, and quite simply they didn't. However, as groups of voice actors get together and hash out dialogue for expansions, I'm sure this will get better. Number 3. You still don't matter. It's a common theme that it seems with Guild Wars 2 campaigns that unfortunately reared its ugly head in the much anticipated sequel. In the very original campaign of Guild Wars, technically in regards to the series lore, your character is basically a spectator to Devonna's group of fighters as they claim their rights to be called heroes. And it's pretty much the same thing in every campaign of Guild Wars 1, whether it be Devonna, Menlo or Cormyr. Arena has their chosen hero and it doesn't involve you. In Guild Wars 2, they seem to be under the same thought pattern once more. Yes, you're the commander of the Pact, but Traherne is the marshal. He is the leader. History and Guild Wars remember his contributions to Tyria, but the players will be forgotten once again. In the build-up of Guild Wars 2, we had this promise from ArenaNet.
Structure, the MMO has lost the ability to make the player feel like a hero. Everybody around you is doing the same thing you're doing. The boss you just killed respawns 10 minutes later. It doesn't care that I'm there.
In my opinion, this wasn't achieved. I know it's immensely hard to make a player feel as if they have a general impact on a world in an MMO when it's filled to the brim with thousands upon thousands of other players. But if this was one of the objectives that ArenaNet set out to accomplish, in my opinion, they didn't achieve it. Now, part of this is because of the dynamic event setup. Sure, you might save a village and they may remember you for it, but it will only be for about the 20 or 30 minutes until the event starts over again and you'll be forgotten. This is something that they could have implemented a reputation system for, something that they had in World of Warcraft. However, much of this sort of conversation goes into my next point. Number 4. The dynamic event system. Don't get me wrong, the very idea and nature of the dynamic event system is something of which I loved, and I still do. Not having to backtrack to quest givers and generally helping out Tyrian civilians like on the fly without having to accept the quest point, doing all that middleman work. It eliminated a lot of that backtracking, and it gave us players a sense of Tyria was truly alive, that it would still live and breathe when we weren't there to experience it. So then why does the system make it onto my list? Well, it's because of the lack of moderation in almost all areas of the game. In the starting areas, there will literally be dozens of events that will pop up, some as quickly as 5 minutes after you finish them. On the other end of the spectrum, like some areas seem to have no events at all, and it can take a long time to actively find one of these events to partake in. This has led to me, when I start a new character, to basically clear all the starting areas, to give them that XP boost, so when I go to these new areas that don't have these events, I don't have to find them in order to get the XP to level up consistently over those areas. These dynamic events were meant to display a meaningful impact on Tyria upon completion, and while many of them do that, it won't be long until the event restarts and your efforts are really forgotten by the NPCs or even the world. Some events are also grossly overpowered, leading to, I've seen entire groups of 30 wiping over and over again, not because of clever systems and and boss tactics. It's just of cheap moves, and it's not really fair. ArenaNet must be aware of these issues, but now, a few months after launch, they have done very little to amend these areas of the game. However, one place where these events were implemented very well was Ore. In the 3 ending areas of the game, players can group a large chain of events and actually have an impact, really, an actual impact over all 3 areas. For instance, if you destroy the Priestess of Lissa, all of her statues in the area will shut down, which grants easier travel to the sector, really for everyone on the server. This is where the event system can feel the most epic, the most rewarding, and also the most challenging. Number 5. Bugs. Now, before I begin, Guild Wars 2 as a game is not a buggy game, but I have encountered a few bugs, a few colossal bugs, and important bugs that haven't been amended over the first stage of the game's lifespan. These include bugged dungeons. I know Zhaitan's going to make his reappearance again on my list, but it's one of these things that's quite important, that the dungeons are bugged themselves. One of the bugs inside Zhaitan's dungeon stops you from progressing through about the middle stage of it, and you have to restart. And Cortica's Manor is another one as well that has a bug literally smack bang at the very end of the game, which it just doesn't register that you've killed the final group of enemies and they keep respawning. I'm sure there are more, but I haven't gone through all of the dungeons or all the different paths or the explorable dungeons, but when you go through these dungeons, which sometimes take a couple of hours to run through the first time, it's a bit of a slap in the face not being able to complete it because of a technical oversight. Many of the dynamic events have been bugged also, not allowing progression or just being outright broken at times. Now, ArenaNet have made sure that these have been looked at, and I've seen a drastic change in the regularity of these event bugs since launch, so they must be commended for that. They are doing something to fix that, and it's getting better day by day as well. But one rather set of frustrating bugs is the multitude of skill point bugs that occur time to time. When you play the game, you have these skill points, and they're part of the map progression. They go towards your 100% completion of the map. So, I cannot tell you how many times that I experienced these bugs during my first 100% map completion playthrough. Many of the zones I had gone through had at least one bug skill point. There's actually one as well right next to Cortica's Manor that was bugged for like a week before it was amended. What is wrong with that place, seriously? Now, while I expect these to be dealt with in the coming months, it did take away from my first experience with the game to have to deal with these numerous issues. For such a beautiful game, it's really a crime that it pulls you out of the experience when these issues occur. So there we are, 5 issues with the game that I love. I could make a list of 100 reasons or more why Guild Wars 2 got things right, and hell, I might even actually do that one day, but I'd love to hear what you have to think of Guild Wars 2. If you haven't purchased it yet, don't let this list sway you away from it. Buy Guild Wars 2 now and you will enjoy every minute. I know I have. But for now, if you could leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more, and if you enjoyed the video as well, check out my weekly comedy inspired series on the game. But for now, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys again.